Our panel, MSNBC political analysts Pat Buchanan and Rachel Maddow, and the Washington Post's Eugene Robinson. Gene, let me start with you. Reverend Jackson pointed out that if it had not been Hillary Clinton saying a woman president would be a sea change, would make history, would change how people perceive who's running things and who can run things and what can be done, but had been Senator Obama saying exactly the same construction, exactly the same wording, only he said an African-American president would be a sea change and give people different ideas of who can run things and bring optimism and hope around the world. Reverend Jackson suggests we would not be reacting to that with the kind of round of applause that Senator Clinton got for her remarks. Is his point well taken? And what would we be doing here in that parallel universe where he answers that question that way?
Well, first of all, Keith, I notice you keep coming to me first in these debates with the first question, and I really resent that. But anyhow, I'll make the best of it. You know, I think it would have been played very differently. It would have been seen as a more polarizing thing to say, and I think afterwards Senator Obama would have some rejecting and denouncing to do if he had tried to make that explicit argument. He's been very careful during the campaign not to make that argument, you know, to let race be what it is without dominating his campaign. Mm-hmm. But I think it would have been played very differently. I think Reverend Jackson is right. It seemed to me that this evening was about Barack Obama being presidential, presenting himself as a president of the United States. I noticed when the question was asked about Iraq, what if Iraq falls apart, what would you do? Hillary Clinton said it was a hypothetical. She doesn't like to deal with hypotheticals. He jumped at the question to say that, well, we have to protect U.S. interests. And I think it was, again, during that whole foreign policy part of the debate, mm-hmm. it was him speaking as a president would speak. And I think that was part of his aim tonight.
Yeah, hey, Pat, that seems like an extraordinarily good point. And I will again use Reverend Jackson here as a starting point and disagree with him. He said he thought that Hillary Clinton had prevailed in the areas of international business and national security, and yet we had the unanswerable answer by Obama to Clinton about Pakistan and bombing Pakistan. I didn't say I was going to bomb Pakistan, but oh, by the way, that's basically what we just did in getting al-Libi in Pakistan. Came back with an answer suggesting that Senator Clinton had equated longevity in Washington with actual practical experience or judgment, and responding to Senator Clinton's answer about being ready on day one, her refrain about that, with saying that being ready, you were ready on day one to enable George Bush to put us in Iraq. Did Senator Obama do better on the international front? Did he seem presidential in that way, in a way perhaps he has not before in this series of debates?
I think he did. I think it was his best points. And Keith, I have to say, you've taken all the lines that I was going to respond to and say, but I will say this, the way he does it, he uses the concrete language. He said, yeah, we're trying together to get the bus out of the ditch, but you voted to drive the bus into the ditch, which is a very effective way of saying it. It was very powerful, his wording. He said, you know, it was the biggest strategic blunder in our history. You drove the bus into the ditch. And he followed up with that, and the language and rhetoric of that was very strong, very powerful, very unequivocal. It was really his best moment. But again, and let me say I agree with Jesse Jackson on this. If he had said, look, with a black American in the White House, mm-hmm. there'll be a different approach here to things, and we'll look at that would have invited a lot of follow-up questions that Hillary's statement does not. And I will say this, the way he handles when Hillary went up, they showed that clip of Hillary up there saying the celestial choirs are coming down and mocking him. And as they cut off it, he said, hey, sounds good to me. And it was a very funny line. And I think
then compliments her joking delivery, too. Yeah.
And to me, this is what Obama's strength in. But I'll say this. I thought she was very strong going after him in the first half. I thought she was winning. In the second half, I thought he parried everything. I do agree that was presidential, as Gene says. And I think the second half of that debate was it's very tough to see how she turns this around, given the fact he did an outstanding job.
And I have now stolen Pat Buchanan's line. I have now given Gene Robinson the first question when he didn't want it. So all I have left is Rachel Maddow to not be mad at me. So Rachel, why don't you just say whatever you perceived happened during the debate, and I'll just stay out of it.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. I would just say, before I think we praise Obama too much for the driving into the ditch line, I think we should all recall that it would be a little bit weird in a metaphorical circumstance or in real life for anybody to vote to drive into a ditch. The metaphor does kind of fall apart when you get down to that level of detail with it. Honestly, the big picture here is I think that John McCain wins the debate tonight. I think this was the Democratic voter enthusiasm suppression act of 2008. It took until late February, but the Democratic race has officially become grim. It was exuberant up until now, and tonight it was a drag. And I think we've seen a lot of Democratic enthusiasm. We've seen huge turnout numbers from the Democrats. Tonight's the first real blow I've seen against that.
Well, those were some tired fighters out there, as we used to say in boxing. Rachel Maddow, Pat Buchanan, Gene Robinson, stay with us. We'll be back with you later on in the